Shipwreck detective Jeremy Green is on a special mission. He's back to where he first became hooked on the science and adventure of shipwreck archaeology.
When you see your wreck site for the first time, the one thing you don't know is what's underneath it. And that's the really exciting part. That's the thing that really gets you going.
And if your quest is for the oldest shipwrecks in the world, this is the place to be. The Mediterranean, a small pocket of the world with a big history. Helen of Troy, Alexander the Great, Jason and the Argonauts. It's the lure of uncovering more about these epic times that draws archaeologists back again and again.
That's diving gear. Okay. That's for...
Jeremy's been invited to help the shipwreck team from the world-leading Institute of Nautical Archaeology on this year's expedition. Despite a glorious past, the INA are in trouble. Unless they find a new shipwreck, the future of the Institute hangs in the balance. No shipwreck, no funding. And not any old shipwreck will do.
We need to find a shipwreck that's worthy of excavation. We found 10 new shipwrecks last year in just a month, but none of them were deemed worthy of mounting a full-scale excavation and raising all of that money, and, you know, the publications wouldn't be significant enough historically. We need something either really historically significant or really exciting to help raise money. So we have to find a wreck, a good wreck.
The rest of Faith's team is ancient ship expert Mark Polzar, archaeologist Sheila Matthews, boat captain Murad Tilev, and fleet captain Fayaz Subay.
Personally, what I like to see happen is to find a fantastic shipwreck that we know nothing about. I mean, that really is the goal. Inshallah, as we say in Turkey, which means Allah willing.
New stamp, new date, new destination, new number. Let's go.
For the next 6 demanding weeks, Virazon's cramped quarters will be home. The catamaran Milawanda will follow with the search equipment. They're heading into the busiest waterway of the ancient world, a trade superhighway.
This is the same journey that a ship would have taken in the classical period. This particular area around here was the hub. It was the turning point for ships going north, ships going west, ships going south, ships going east. It's so much easier to put your trade into a ship than it is to put it on a donkey and drag it over the mountains that you see around here. You didn't have cars, you didn't have trucks, you didn't have trains. Ships were the main method of transportation.
Over the centuries, all this traffic means thousands of shipwrecks and thousands of chances to find something that could rewrite history. It's happened before. The ancient Greeks were well known for their art and culture, but no one suspected they were also groundbreaking scientists. A shipwreck changed all that. In 1900, off the Greek island of Antikythera, a mysterious object was pulled from the water.
It was something like a box with gears on the inside and dials on the outside. Originally, I think it was thought to be a navigational device capable of calculating the position of the sun and moon, but more recently thought to be capable of calculating the positions of all the known planets in the solar system. In effect, the first analog computer.
The discovery rewrote history. The device was originally thought to have been invented 1,400 years later.
That's the value of shipwrecks. Immediately, history has changed. And it shows that in the classical, in the Hellenistic period, the the people like Aristotle and Plato and Archimedes and these people, we have only seen a little tiny weeny bit of what must have been going on.
Discoveries like the Antikythera mechanism are what makes us so excited about the work we do, because the potential for making that sort of discovery lies beneath the sea at any minute that we're searching for shipwrecks.
The 6-week expedition will be in 2 parts. For the first 3 weeks, they'll search using Jeremy's side-scan sonar.
Okay, so one of you take the weight of the fish. And
The team is hoping that Jeremy's expertise with sonar will give them an extra edge on this critical expedition.
The side-scan sonar basically shows you a picture of the seabed. As if you were shining a torch on the seabed and the bumpy things show up with shadows and highlights. And eventually you just get a very large map of what the bottom of the seabed looks like.
Millawanda will slowly tow the sonar up and down the search area. With only 3 weeks to find a good wreck, the team's hopes rest firmly on Jeremy's shoulders.
What's happening now is you're beginning to see sand waves. I suspect that is.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Jeremy's used sonar to find shipwrecks around the world, but this is the first time he's used it to look for ancient ships. And they present a special problem. When searching for 3,000-year-old ships, there is no ship to be found.
When the ship sinks, what we're going to find is not a complete ship sitting upright with its masts and sails still in place. Once timber spends any time submerged in the water and starts to rot, it starts to disintegrate, the structure collapses and the whole thing goes flumps.
So the ship disappears. But there is a clue: ceramic amphoras.
Amphoras were essentially the barrels of antiquity. They were the things that were used to ship commodities from one place to another in the Mediterranean. Amphora means carried on both sides, carried with 2 handles. Transport amphoras also have pointed toes, because the amphoras could be stacked nicely into the hold of a ship, and also the pointed toe helped in lifting and pouring.
But even the amphoras are likely to be buried under thousands of years of silt and sand, making them even tougher to find.
I'm a little bit apprehensive, I think, because the wrecks that we spotted last year are mostly covered with sand, and you just see, you know, a little bit of the shoulder or the belly of the amphora on its side, or a little bit of the mouth of the amphora sticking above the sand. So there isn't any mound, there isn't anything to cast a shadow.
My problem was interpreting what is an anomaly, which is not seabed.
You've been on sonar before.
And don't forget, this is new to me too, because I haven't dealt with these sorts of wrecks before.
But the sand is not all bad news. On rare occasions, if it covers a wreck quickly enough, it can preserve the wooden hull for thousands of years. And that is the find that archaeologists live for.
We can have the wood analyzed to find out which tree was used or what kind of timbers were used for the construction of the ship. And also, again, with checking the wood, we can determine where the wood originated from, so we can find out where the ship was built.
Studying the design of the hull gives archaeologists insights into the life and times in which the ship was built.
All of this is really about the ancient people and how they lived, how they did things, and comparing to how we do them today. Really, until the jet age, ships were the most technically advanced object that man was building. It's very fascinating to study how they were conceiving of the shapes of the ship, how they solved all these different technical and mechanical problems of building a ship that could support heavy weights, that could travel across the entire Mediterranean. I think gives us a bit of insight to the ancient man.
So for archaeologists, wood is the ultimate prize. But to find it, you first have to find your invisible wreck. And Jeremy's sonar is paying dividends.
This is the map of the general area from Kumlu, Brunu down to Kislada. And if you look here, what we have is 4 small targets.
There are 4.
1, 2, 3, 4. There's 1 dome and 3, when I call dome, it's something like that. It could be a pile of amphora. I mean, I've got no idea, and that's where it'll be really
And the
useful.
dome means simply that it's a dome-shaped
Which
target.
could also be a wreck site.
4 targets could be 4 shipwrecks.
He's just dropped the first buoy, and we're headed down a bit south-southwest to drop the second buoy, and then the sub will dive between those buoys. So hopefully we'll find something, because it's just the right area.
To help them search, they have a secret weapon. The mini-submersible, Carolyn. Carolyn is capable of taking them to 60-metre depths and staying down for 2 hours, something a diver could never do. But no underwater operation is without risk.
For the submersible, there are all sorts of safety rules and regulations that if one little thing is not working, we don't go down with it. Even though it's got backups for everything, we still don't use it.
Despite being resistant to pressure, the glass bubble is incredibly fragile, and this dive is in a busy waterway. Carolyn must rely on the team to be her eyes and ears on the surface, so communications are vital.
Hi, Carolyn. We just want to check that you're reading us. How are your systems? Over. Carolyn, this is Bellawanda. Say again, please. Over. Carolyn, this is Bellawanda. Do you hear me? Over. Carolyn, this is Bellawanda. Over.
With communications down, Carolyn should surface. But a boat is heading towards the sub, and the team is helpless to warn her to stay down.
Geleceğiz biraz. Evet.
Outside.
With comms re-established, Carolyn can finally head off to find Jeremy's sonar targets. She'll report back with their finds.
You gonna tell us what you saw?
That's sand. Absolutely.
Sand.
Little tiny sponges.
Jeremy, can you hear this? They went down your buoy line and saw sand.
It's a shaky start, but there are more targets to investigate.
Jerry, this is Mark. We've just been maneuvering around this rocky patch. We think it is your target.
Faith, I found something interesting. Sheila, could you mark this point?
We have found an interesting site down here. This capture of several buried amphora, one possible cooking pot, and another small bowl or something we're just investigating. Over.
Roger that. That sounds very interesting. Over.
If you've lost your sails, you've got a hole in your hull, or you're just floundering for whatever reason, quite often they will throw out some of the heavier cargo just to bring their boat out of the water.
Could this amphora be a part of a cargo lost as a ship foundered?
What we hope to find generally is a scattering of amphoras that leads to the actual wreck itself.
Getting shivers.
For an archaeologist, the humble amphora is a gold mine.
Each city or each group will produce an amphora that has different diagnostic features, like pointed shoulders or rings around the toes, so we can tell just from looking at the amphora or a fragment of the amphora where it was manufactured. They also developed in design. Their shape changed over the centuries.
Every 50 years, probably the style change. Just as Coca-Cola bottles today change their styles, and you can say, oh, that Coca-Cola bottle, that's 1920s one, or that was made in the 50s. So you can identify the date, the time, the place, the trade, and of course they're just wonderful indicators of wreck size too.
But this time, the scatter does not lead to a wreck, and the trail goes cold.
It's a bit demoralizing, I have to say. And the fact that they were right at the bottom of the first target that he thought was the most promising target and didn't see anything but the sand and not sand, is kind of sad too. So we'll have to make another plan.
The new plan turns them to an unlikely source of information, which they hope will narrow down the sonar search area.
Here are the Kizilada reports, sort of all on one.
Long before archaeologists, divers were searching the Turkish coast for treasure of a different kind. Sea sponge. But at times they found more than they bargained for. In 1900, a panicked diver came up from the water shouting about a pile of dead women on a seabed.
When he took his helmet off, he was babbling incoherently that he's seen naked women and, you know, kind of thing. When they went down to investigate, what they found was that it was actually a wreck, and it was absolutely full of Greek bronze and marble statues.
It was the find of the century. A Roman ship carrying a hoard of magnificent Greek statues, thought to have been the spoils of war.
When the Romans conquered the Greek world, they became enamored of Greek sculptures, and they not only sacked and destroyed a lot of Greek cities, but they plundered the sculpture from those cities to bring them back to Rome by ship to decorate their palaces and villas.
It seems the sponge divers stumbled upon a shipload of plundered loot.
Once the sponge divers notified the authorities, they performed a salvage operation. And salvage is not archaeology.
It was like sending a herd of bulls into an ancient china shop.
These are sponge divers who were wearing bronze helmets, bulky suits. Their lead shoes would have gone through amphoras, would have crushed amphoras, would have broken other objects. I mean, delicate objects. No delicate objects came up from that wreck at all.
But despite the destruction, they rescued the biggest collection of classical Greek bronze and marble statues ever found.
Because of the sponge divers finding this pile of sculpture, we have these amazing sculptures in the Athens National Museum today. So it's both really wonderful that it was discovered at all, and really heartbreaking that so much information was lost.
Since that first discovery, sponge divers have led archaeologists to every important shipwreck in Turkey.
Well, 9 is the only.
But the sponge divers' reports are often sketchy.
We really only have 2 verbal reports from Kizilada. One that's on the mainland side that has those pointed amphoras. Yes.
We should tow the sonar around Kizilada, getting deeper and deeper and deeper.
The island of Kizilada offers some good leads, but verifying them will require some delicate negotiation.
The old sponge divers, you go speak to them and they say, yeah, I know lots of wrecks. And I say, yeah, can you tell us? He says, no, not really. They always rely on these sites that one day, when they run out of money, all the possibilities for them have ended. They can always go back there and pick a few things up and sell under the table to somebody and make a couple of $1,000 and off they go.
They need some local knowledge, and the man in the know is archaeologist Don Fry.
Dad, where's my shipwreck?
Oh, I don't know. I think your karma's going to bring the shipwrecks because we haven't found any yet.
Sponge divers are, you know, they're a great asset to us for finding wrecks because they have basically covered the underwater coast.
This area was once the heart of the sponge diving industry, when villagers came down from the mountains to find their fortunes in the sea. But they didn't know that diving was a deadly gamble.
The longer they stayed down, the more nitrogen they absorbed into their bloodstream. And when they came up, they got the bends. And the bends is essentially that the gas that is absorbed into their bloodstream, as the pressure reduces, comes out as bubbles. And the bubbles will get into their joints, they would get into their nerves, they would get into their spine, they would get into their brain, and they would become paralysed. Hundreds and hundreds of sponge divers died.
The sponge industry is long gone, but a few old-timers remain.
Sen çok güzel dönüyorsun ya. Alkol yok. Alkol yok. Rakı bıraktın mı? 10 years finish. Ama ben dün... Come. Let's go. We're going to go.
But will this old diver's information be any use?
What about between Arap Ardasa and Kızılada? Is that a good area or a bad
Sen
area?
Arap Ardasa çalıştın mı? Kızılada. Tabii. Bak şöyle harita.
They appear to be in luck.
Arap Ardasa şu. Oraya çalıştın mı? Çalıştık bu sularda. Ya. Ama Hatay'da nerede? Kızılada nerede? Marmaris bu taraflarda. Evet. I was just saying, is there a place where he always pulled up amphors and he said on this side of Kızılada? Kunduz. Fener var ya Kunduz.
He confirms the team's hopes. The island of Kızılada is a hotspot.
It's another little sort of piece in the jigsaw coming together.
New leads pay off.
This is the target that we're going to dive on, the several small objects. This is the coastline here, then it comes down, reaches a sandy bottom and then comes across, and these are my targets here.
Pairs of divers will head off to find the 5 sonar targets. Faith and Mark spot what must be the first one. But it's an 18th century safe, sunken treasure to most divers, but not to an ancient shipwreck team. But did the other targets pay off?
Nothing.
Desert.
Desert. There's sand everywhere.
Nothing.
Nothing, no.
Not even a broken piece.
So you found the target, but it was what?
Rock.
Rock.
Differentiating between a wreck site and a piece of rock is pretty difficult. You know, you can have a rock. I mean, with how many targets we've seen that are sort of rock-like wrecks or wreck-like rocks, you know.
Everyone's pretty down. So we're looking for a mood change. We're looking for something good to happen. And I hope it will.
We've got a storm coming up at the moment. Pias is worried about the boat, and it's not a nice place to be if it really does blow up badly. It's a very deceptive sea, the Mediterranean. You have lovely calm weather and then suddenly out of nowhere you get these sorts of things.
It's easy for us. You turn the engine on, pull the anchor up, and you motor off, and you can avoid the storm or you can sail through it. Now just imagine we're in the 4th century in a sailing boat off these cliffs here, and the wind suddenly turns from the south. They're going to get blown slowly onto the shore, and unless they can find ways to get an anchor down and get into some sort of protection, they've had it. They've got no escape.
It must have been terrifying to be in a storm like this, battling the elements with the winds howling and the heavy seas and great waves crashing over the decks of the ship. And a lot of times they didn't make it.
Over the centuries, storms would have sunk thousands of ships along this coast. And the team have a storm casualty of their own. Millawanda is out of action. It's the final blow to the team's morale.
Something is jinxing us. We don't know whether we're going to have Millawanda. You can proceed with Virazon, but only in calm weather.
Only in fine weather, and you were saying that the Poseidon forecast is for the next 2 days?
Still windy, but not as bad as today. But then the day after, Friday, 25th,
Calm
looks
day.
very good.
Yeah.
Very good.
Calm day. We really, really fully need these next 5 days just to make sure that Jeremy's work is done. Give a shout if you see anything.
Yes, okay, don't worry.
All right.
You'll be the first.
I hope so. I mean, I want some good news, Jeremy.
Gonna fish down now, Mark.
All right.
With the permit to use the sonar just about up, the team are desperate for a change of fortune.
Certainly the problems that we're having now, both the equipment problems and the morale problems, would be solved by the discovery of a wreck that was worthy of excavating. I mean, that's what this survey is all about.
At last, there's a glimmer of hope.
Well, I definitely think this is worth having another look at. Whatever it is, there's another bit of it there.
What about dropping? Why don't we just...
Pass over.
Well, no, I'll put a marker on it so that we've got
We
a
can
marker.
dive to 56 meters, so we want to just dive right here instead of going back to a rough odyssey and see what it is?
Let's just
drop the mark?
let's just check out it slowly, shall we?
Before
we go.
Don't get too hasty here.
Yes.
The return pass will confirm the reading.
Yeah, maybe just cut the engine and there doesn't appear to be anything there that I can see at the moment. And we're well past it now.
That's a disappointment.
Yeah, it's a bit disappointing, but if you've got a nice mound of amphoras, even if they're just sitting on the surface, we'd see that, sure. So there doesn't appear currently to be any sites in this area. Maybe they're over there.
But it's too late. The 3-week sonar search is over, without reward. Despite the disappointment, there are still 3 weeks left, and Phase 2 begins with an unexpected morale boost. A visit from Claude Dutuy and the great George Bass, the founding father of maritime archaeology.
Without him, none of us would be doing the work that we love so much today.
In the 1960s, George Bass was the first archaeologist to excavate an ancient shipwreck.
George started the discipline of maritime archaeology. George brought really rigorous archaeological technique to the field. He's the father of the whole business.
The world was captivated by this glamorous new breed whose discoveries shook up the world of archaeology.
I would say that the glass wreck we did, which is medieval, you know, it's 11th century AD, and the Ullabarun Bronze Age ship were two of the most important archaeological sites of their periods, on land or underwater, ever excavated. Each of those contributed so much new knowledge to archaeology.
The medieval glass wreck was an archaeological puzzle that proved the value of Bass's meticulous technique.
We excavated it by sweeping the sand by hand and then keeping the water clear in front of where you're working with these suction pipes called air lifts.
The wreck contained masses of glass, almost all of it broken.
I don't like to ever use gloves because you do so much by feel, so you can imagine our hands looked like we were excavating razor blades.
We were constantly cutting our hands. We had a doctor with us. The doctor would stitch our hands. We'd have to go back down with stitches in our hands just to keep working to get the work done.
They painstakingly recorded and raised every fragment of glass. There were 3 tons, filling 3 floors of the lab. But the real test was trying to make sense of it.
We had this bonanza of glass in 500,000 to 1 million shards, which we spent 20 years putting together as, I'm sure, the world's largest jigsaw puzzle. Since we thought it was just glass vessels that had broken when the ship went down, we would take all the glass from, let us say, 1 square meter of the wreck and look for the joins. And we were quite surprised that we could never find any. One night it struck me, that's no way to do a jigsaw puzzle. If you do a jigsaw puzzle, you separate out the blue sky, the green grass, and the white of the house, and the brown of the tree trunk.
But they still couldn't complete the picture. If the glassware broke as the ship sank, all the pieces would be on the wreck.
We produced hundreds of vessels. In no case did we have all the pieces. We know we did not overlook these on the seabed. I mean, we were finding everything. We never found every piece of any vessel out of hundreds and hundreds.
And then the penny dropped. If pieces were missing, the glass must have been broken before it was put on the ship.
We were dealing with a cargo of broken glass meant to be recycled. It was not broken because of the ship hitting the bottom.
The puzzle proved that 900 years ago, our medieval ancestors recycled and also revealed the purpose of the voyage. But there was even more to learn about life on board. Intact glassware and coins in the crew's quarters tell us it was an Islamic ship. But religious artifacts and amphoras containing pork bones revealed there must have also been Christians on board.
The glass wreck had the largest collection of Byzantine tools ever found, the largest collection of Byzantine weapons ever found, the oldest dated chest ever found, the oldest dated modern hull, the largest collection of medieval Islamic glass, the largest collection of medieval Islamic glazeware, and coins and weights, and on and on and on. We know what they were eating, how they were fishing, what they were catching, what size nets they were used, how they were shaving, how they were combing the nits out of their hair because they were probably crawling with lice like sailors of the past always were. And that was just one wreck.
Just when they thought it couldn't get any better, they hit the jackpot. The oldest shipwreck ever found.
The chances of finding a 3,300-year-old ship are small, but the chances of finding an incredible royal shipment from the Bronze Age, I think, is mind-boggling. I don't know that this will ever happen again.
The 14th century BC Bronze Age ship had gone down carrying its royal cargo. The Ullabarun wreck hit the headlines.
A poll of archaeologists for one popular archaeological magazine said that it was one of the 10 greatest archaeological discoveries of all time, ranking right in there with the discovery of Machu Picchu or King Tut's tomb and other of these spectacular things.
It's the same date as the lamp.
The Ullabarun wreck was my favorite excavation. We worked for 3 or 4 months every summer for 11 summers from 1984 through 1994. I never wanted to take my wetsuit off. Every day we went down, there were extremely important and exciting discoveries. I think we had in excess of 18,000 objects that were found on that shipwreck over 11 summers. Beautiful jewelry, gold, silver, and bronze, semi-precious stone beads that must have gone to make up necklaces.
Weapons, swords, merchant seals they use for sealing documents. 20 tons of material from the time of King Tut. 20 tons in remarkable condition. Ola Brun has just rewritten a lot of the history of the Bronze Age, and that's what we want to do, rewrite history in some way.
George Bass's discoveries have set the bar high, but his visit has inspired the team. They head south to where last year Fayaz found a rare painted crater bowl. The question now is there any more?
It's very nice, very beautiful piece, and I have a nice picture hanging in my office. Next day I'm holding like this in my hand, and behind me the Knidos ruins. I like it very much, but I will never be so lucky in my life again.
If they are lucky, it would be a big win for the team, as this pottery has priceless images of ancient life.
Let's go to the boulder first again, where you found the crater.
Signs on the seabed are hopeful.
We've seen an Arabalos, we've seen lots of different types of things, not just the 2 types of amphoras that we discovered last year, but at least 3 more types of amphoras. Now we're finding galley-ware. There's a lot down there. Very typical sort of plain-ware shape. It's really interesting to think that this is 2,500 years old, yes, and that somebody may have been eating their breakfast out of this.
Probably eating their yogurt out of it.
Their yogurt out of it, right.
It's looked like Arabalos, but I cannot say 100%. Nice shape. I like it.
But the scatter of objects doesn't appear to lead to a mother lode. The team can feel the survey slipping through their fingers, and with it, the future of the INA. Time for a change of tactics. Looking through their records, they find a report of a prominent headland which would have been a major shipping hazard. This will allow them to narrow the search and pick up the pace.
Boy, this place is just littered. Look at that, just tops and bottoms and broken sections all over the place.
Look at this here.
Fayaz makes an exceptional find, a large classical Greek crater bowl.
A crater is a mixing bowl for wine and water. The Greeks loved wine, and they loved to go to the symposia, which were essentially Greek drinking parties, but they were intellectual drinking parties where they solved the problems of the world while they were drinking and talking. If you had to answer the question, why it's such a large crater, I can only say that it must have been going to a very large party.
The bowl is so unusually large that despite the depth, it's worth the difficult and dangerous task of raising it. Before the deep dive, they ready the decompression chamber.
The chamber is there because if somebody does come up with a bend or some symptom to do with decompression sickness, they'd be put in the chamber and put on a treatment table.
If we have a case of embolism, we will go straight down to 160 feet, which will probably be very painful for your ears, but it's okay to have first eardrums, then be dead, crippled or dead.
When you raise an object from a wreck site, you have got to be very careful. The whole operation is dangerous. They're actually quite heavy. What you can do is use a lifting bag, which you fill up with air, and the air being buoyant balances the weight of the object that you're lifting. You've got to do a very fine balancing act so that you don't suddenly take off like a rocket to the surface.
Because the dive was so deep, the team now have to spend 20 minutes at a depth of 10 meters in order to decompress.
Everything you do is very carefully controlled by the decompression tables, because basically if you get it wrong, you'll end up like the sponge divers. You'll end up a cripple or dead.
But suddenly, things do go wrong. There's too much air in the lifting bag. Refusing to let go of their precious cargo, Mark and Murat are dragged to the surface. They've missed their decompression stop. Now they have to act quickly.
You've got two options with that. You either get put in the chamber because you missed the stop, or you go back down to the decompression stop and you do extra decompression.
Regaining control, they manage to drag the artifact back down, but the damage has been done. The team on the boat urgently calculate the extra decompression time the divers will need to expel the deadly nitrogen from their bloodstreams. But even with Faith's help, again they lose control. The surface team hit the panic button and ready the decompression chamber. Again they drag the crater down, but they're in serious trouble. Missing their stop twice, they're at even greater risk of the bends. To make matters worse, during the struggle a strong current has pulled them a long way from the boat. They now face a long swim back. Their air supply is dangerously low, and they must not surface. Suddenly, Mark is out of air. Faith steps in to share her air. But you won't have enough for them both.
Head up that way.
Jeremy orders a dinghy to drag back the struggling divers. On their last dregs of air, they finally sight the hull of the boat and rush to the emergency oxygen. But they're not yet out of danger. Fayaz is anxious to monitor for any early symptoms of the bends, in case anyone needs the chamber.
Yes, please.
After nearly 2 hours, the divers surface. They're cold and exhausted, and although physically unharmed, the whole team is shaken up.
I realized we drifted a long way because when the boat started towing us, it took ages to get back here. Panic starts setting in, wondering what you're going to do. You look up to the surface, shall I go up to the surface? And you worry about decompression and all that. So it was a little bit of a hairy moment.
Thank goodness no one got hurt and we got back okay. And the object was okay. So that was a good result, but still, it shouldn't have happened.
At last they can examine the prize they risked their lives for.
This piece probably is from the 5th century, maybe mid-5th century, which would be around 450 BC. So, it's almost 2,500 years old. And for being that old, it's in great shape.
But it's still not enough. The headland yields another site and more unusual artifacts that have the team guessing.
Have you seen these, Leos?
Never before. First time.
I have no idea.
Whatever wine to drink for one person? No, I don't think so. Maybe some celebration. For to drink special wine or what it is, I don't know. I'm sure not for ice cream.
Everybody's been calling them carrot amphores, but it's clearly not an amphora.
Looks like two different potters.
Well, it
in the same
does.
way.
But they're crudely made. I mean, they're not really well made. Nonetheless, intriguing because they're unusual.
Intriguing as they are, objects alone are not enough to warrant an excavation. They must find a shipwreck.
There's something. Look at that. Wow. Hey, topside, this is Carolyn. We have found a huge mound of amphoras. It's a very, very large concentration of broken amphitech. What we can see right now. It's quite amazing.
That sounds fantastic.
Oh, that is wonderful.
Any idea of how many amphoras we're talking about? Over?
Definitely over 100. I mean, it's quite a very, very large amount.
Is it a mound or is it a scatter? Over.
This is definitely a mound. It's on a slope, it's on sand, it's quite long. Globular amphoras, wow, intact and broken ones. It's really cool, actually. Over.
So this is a real wreck. This is a wreck, over.
Oh, absolutely. It's like your textbook wreck down here.
Sounds very exciting. We can't wait to get down there and see it.
It's the first wreck that I've seen such a large collection of amphora in situ on the surface before any excavation has been done to uncover the rest of the amphoras. So it's just an amazing sight to see it. You can get a feel for the ship sitting there. You can see the shape of the ship, and it sort of just brings the whole scene to life for you. And just to look upslope on all these amphoras stretching out is just absolutely amazing and very, very exciting.
It is spectacular. The main reason being is that it's boat-shaped. It means that probably when the ship went down, it went down in one piece and stayed together. And so it's really the classic shipwreck that you always want to find.
Great wreck. Sensational.
I think that's one of the best dives I've had in 30 years. I really do. I loved it.
It's just marvelous to look at. It just strewed out across the slope. Has a nice, very ship-like shape to it. And clearly lots underneath the surface layer, so I'd love to get down, look more underneath there. Very nice. Very nice.
And then they make a stunning find. A tiny, unassuming fragment of wood with a nail hole clearly visible. In an instant, the importance of the wreck has skyrocketed.
It definitely means that the potential there is for a fair amount of hull conserved underneath all this amphoras. So to me that was very exciting because hopefully there will be a lot of ship there left.
For Faith and the team, it's the best possible result. The untold information they can learn from this spectacular wreck and its wooden hull makes it an instantly attractive future excavation.
Everyone say, no,
Congratulations.
do this one.
Finally, the team have a result worth celebrating.
Thank you for everything you've done, and we have a small presentation
little
to
talk.
make
There you go.
Oh my God.
at Oceanus.
Oh, lovely. Well,
Bye. Oh, Jeremy, thank you so much for everything. No, think about us. Think about us.
My regards to Susan.
It is a relief to find something at the very end of this. I mean, there was a time when I think we were all getting a bit depressed that nothing was turning up. So, like all good stories, it has a sort of happy ending.